What's up, everybody? I'm Phil Rogacki.
And I'm Jared Abergina.
And you're listening to Two Tree Guys Podcast.
I can't tell you how many people still come and they're like,
recording now.
Awesome. So I can't tell you how many people come and they're like, hey, what's up? Thank you. Like, because we got onboarded a couple years ago. Now my family's doing good. I've moved to California. I'm working over here with Mountain now. And it's like, oh my God, like it's incredible.
You know, I really miss the experience of being down there on the fires. And to be completely honest, like the work that we were doing, it wasn't the fanciest, especially toward the end of our role. Like in the beginning, we were tying into trees. I was going up on cranes. I was taking people up on cranes. Like it was very hands-on, very high level. Several times I got contracted actually, you know, through the organization that we were working for to go and handle hazard trees. There was times where I was putting together like blank check gear lists to deal with trees that, you know, some folks were just like, I don't even really know how we're going to start this thing. And it was so fun. But it was interesting to see how our role changed. And although it wasn't the most glamorous, it was so rewarding, right? Because now, like you, I get messages. I've probably had like 2 or 3 dozen people come up to me at the show and be like, hey man, do you remember me? Because you brought me on to whatever it was, the Butte Fire or Santa Rosa or whatever, or you did some training at the municipality in New York or whatever. And it's so cool to see that, like, although we were just there teaching and we were just, you know, kind of doing our job, those ripples are just flowing through the industry, man. Like, it's totally a dream come true for me to be, like, still in this role in the industry.
Yeah. No, and I live in Magalia, in Paradise, just above Paradise.
Wow.
You know? My kids are down there. They're going to school there. We plan on doing it for the rest of the year. And then, God willing, going back to Texas after that, and me continuing a little bit of what we do throughout the country. But, you know, my wife is very supportive. You know, she puts up with all my stuff. And she
shout out to our wives.
Big shout out.
Big
babe,
shout out to our wives.
I'm coming home tonight, this afternoon, babe.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, staff.
Thank you for everything you do. And I promise we're working.
Yeah, we are.
Not just fun.
It's not just fun. You know, when we were in Paradise, I actually had my family come too, and my son at the time was very young. And what was so cool about Paradise is that, you know, this is a community that has just been through a pretty significant event. You know, people lost everything, and they got that little main street going, right? They built that Starbucks, they got that gas station going. There was a mediocre grocery store, and you and I would walk in there and we'd be, you know, filthy, just like ash and dirt, and we'd have our high vis on, and everybody was so thankful that we were there. They were so appreciative, and like we were appreciative to be there. It was just this, it was almost like a post 9/11 vibe. And what was so cool is that my wife and my son would come in with me, and then obviously I would leave because we were always getting called out or having to go put out fires. And people would come up to my family and be like, thank you so much for being here. Thank your husband. You know what I mean? And like, what else could you ask for?
You should see it now. So this is the first year they opened the schools completely back up.
Wow.
There's stores now. We just removed the last tree.
Really?
The last tree. I'm still in the project. I'm still getting goosebumps. We just removed the last tree because now they went in and they did the FEMA work of it. You know? So if you were devastated by it and your house was no longer there, they came in and removed the extra trees that were a hazard to your property so that you can rebuild. And I was helping one of the companies out there with all of that. And it's so cool. It's just like, you know, I have a house that was saved by the fire.
That's insane.
And I have the most beautiful trees there is in Magalia. And it's just crazy that we're there. But that's awesome. So what do you got going on now? What's going on?
Well, you know, the nature of
Johnny doing?
The nature of my life is there's no real downtime. So obviously, as a contract instructor, I was all over the place, and as a pro athlete, I was all over the place. And then also running a tree company, which is growing. Obviously, I'm sure that you've experienced this, and so many other people have too. COVID had a major effect on our world, but man, did it dial the volume of the industry up to 11. Like, you know, I've hired more people, I've bought more equipment. So the company is growing, and thankfully I've been thankfully I've been introduced to the right people and I have the right experience now that I'm able to equip my guys with the skills that they need so that I can go away and do what I'm doing. So I'm still a contract instructor for Arboriculture Canada. Awesome. I'm still flying wingsuits. I'm still coaching skydiving when I can. I've got another baby on the way, which I'm pretty stoked about. Yeah, so
it's a boy, girl already.
I do. Yeah, we got a baby boy coming in April, so that's going to be exciting. So the family's growing, the business is growing, and so much of our lives, we're spent on the road, right? Like airplanes, rental cars, hotels by myself, and I think one of the directions that I'm now heading towards is, if I do have to be on the road for a long time, I'm going to try to bring my family, or at least I'm going to bring a colleague or a friend so that it's more of a shared experience. And yeah, it's expensive to do that. And yeah, it can be a pain in the butt to do it, but quality of life over just the paycheck is something that we all need to realize at some point. Mm-hmm. So, whether it's a road trip to go climb mountains, or a road trip to go fly parachutes, or to come down and do a whole bunch of training, if I'm going to be gone any more than a week at a time, I'm going to figure out a way to, bring the family down. But aside from that, in terms of projects, man, like, being at home, basically at home for the last couple of years, I built a bike park in my hometown, which was pretty cool. Coming from a professional mountain biking past, it was so fun to be able to take this area that had been very neglected by our municipality. And now every day that I drive down through the river bottom of my home, dozens of kids and families doing that, and then I'm coming back the other way. And what was so cool about that project is, like so many things in my life, what I'm doing over here is supporting what I'm doing over there. Absolutely. Right? So we're removing trees, a lot of trees in southern Alberta right now for various reasons, whether it's bugs and pest infestations and populations changing, or climate change affecting the way that how cold our winters are getting, which is severe, how hot our summers are getting, periods of drought. So all those trees that have been cut down, we're now turning into processed materials. So all the lumber for the bike park, locally sourced trees. All the mulch to keep all of the moisture in the ground, locally sourced trees. Like every piece of lumber and every piece of mulch that is at that bike park came through one of my machines or through the hands of one of my employees. So it's really neat to see how, arboriculture, which is a job, you know what I mean, is now supporting so many other passions of mine.
Isn't it crazy that people don't have that in their jobs and their jobs, or in their life itself? I look at a lot of that we do, and I do some stuff at Border Patrol. Yeah. And so whenever you go to Mexico and you come back to the U.S., you go to Border Patrol station. Yeah. And we trim some trees there every year, and we do an inventory. We do all the nicely pruning and all that. And I think about it, and I'm like, when I die, my kids will still come through here, and they'll be like, Dad used to take care of the trees, and that's forever. Like forever. Those cuts, those sealed cuts will forever be there. Yeah, man. And they can say, Dad made that cut. Exactly. And it's
and not only
awesome.
that, but they're going to be able to. They're going to go on Netflix and they're going to watch the Paradise Fire documentary, and they're going to be like, see those trees that are burning right now? Oh, God. My dad at least had a hand in making sure that town got rebuilt. And then one day they're going to be roaming around that town again, and it's so cool to know that, even at least in some small part, the effort and the work that we're putting in is having a lasting effect. And really, what else could you ask for?
Not only for others, but for your family.
Yeah, man, they're going to see that.
And it's something that I don't know how I would do it otherwise.
Well, now that you've experienced, there's no going back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even if I tried, I don't think they'll take me back anywhere else.
So tell me about the training you're doing. Like, what's going on? Like, obviously, when you and I were teaching and training together, we were working for a different organization. And now, from what I understand, you're kind of doing something different.
I've always helped out training organizations. When I got into training, I got into training because of the translation and the Spanish and all that good stuff. So a lot of what I did when I first started was, hey, help us train some of our trainers, help us do this, do that. And so for me, it's turned into helping. I mean, I'm here at the academy. Yeah. I helped them out as well. Yep. I did some work with ACRT. Yep. There was no like, oh, this is just my company and I'll just do stuff through my company. Yeah. It's the way I've always lived my life. Even when I had a private company, it was hey, you need help with your company? We're like, why would you want to help me? You have your own company, and people freak out.
Yeah,
it's
I know.
Like,
they're taken aback. They're like, wait a second. Like, what's your angle here?
Yeah, what do you want? What do you want from me? I was like, I don't know. You just suck, and I think I can help you out. You know, and like you're a company that needs this, and you know, a lot of people are like, okay, you know, and they took me in, and I was able to help my neighbor company, you know, make them better, you know, and in turn they gave me work, and we just learned from each other a lot, and I think that's really what's happened with the training. You know, I still help out a ton of organizations. So, like my company is called the Arborist Institute.
Okay.
But listen, we hardly promote it as such because we work with the Academy, we work with all these other companies, and we didn't want to just be our own thing, or we wanted to do it big, and so. A lot of site safety. I've always been a consultant, so a lot of utility companies have hired our services or hold us on retainer. We're really like lawyers, you know. So if something happens, they're like, "Hey,
we'll be there tomorrow." Yeah, we can be on a flight. Yep.
So onboarding, site safety. You might have met Ryan Serdursky. He's around here.
Yep.
He helps out as well. So a lot of work with the utilities, mountain. Arbor Works, all those
what's so cool about the direction that I'm seeing, you know, when I got into this industry, which literally was 20 years ago, I've been doing this 20 years, which is so wild to actually be able to say.
I know.
And back in the day, man, it was so divided, right? Company A didn't even talk to you didn't even want to recognize that company B existed because it was all about survival. You know, it's like, we got to get that job. It was very cutthroat. It was very competitive. And I'm so glad to see that things are heading in a different direction because frankly, it's more fun like this.
Oh yeah.
And I think, you know, what I'm seeing in the industry now with online presences, with the expansion and scaling of tips and tricks and training and how we're embracing technology and online training, it's beautiful to see that, you know, guys like yourself and, you know, guys like me are able to not end up pigeonholed into a single organization, right? It's not about serving a single master as much as it is about a higher level perspective. We want to elevate this industry, right? And if we can raise that tide, it's going to raise all the ships. And I think that even some of the organizations that in the past have been maybe a little bit more, you know, cautious about allowing some knowledge or some intellectual property to get out, I think that they're starting to open up to that too, because we are trying to serve a greater goal.
Right.
And like you, I literally train and contract for my competition back home in Canada. And it's more fun.
Do you still get people ask you like, why do you do that?
Absolutely. Like, you know, and I just love the fact that, you know, I might come, maybe my competition has a technical tree that might be just like slightly out of their reach. They can call me in, I'll come in on a day rate, and while I'm working, I can be talking through headsets, right? I can be on Bluetooth.
Training, you're helping them.
Exactly. And I'm explaining what I'm doing, you know, like, you know, you're up in a crane and like, well, why did you make that side of the V cut that way? And I can say, you know, like right now,
you're
I'm
like, all right, guys,
check
this out. What I'm going to do right now is you want to do this because of this and that.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right.
And they're like, oh, I get it,
like,
right? Because it's so difficult, especially when you start getting to a higher level, to have people right beside you when you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, by nature, you probably shouldn't be right beside me doing that thing.
Right.
So it's just, I'm loving that, you know, technology, professionalism, and openness are now sort of starting to flood through the industry. I just love the direction that it's going, and I do think it's going to keep people safer, and I think it's going to keep people happier. And really, when you've had as many near-death experiences as I've had, you can't help but realize that, like, yes, this is a job, yes, this is a career, but this is just one aspect of a life that you're going to live. So try to leave this place in a better place than you found it. You know?
Man, yeah, you can't put it better than that.
Thanks.
And how many people that we know are not here,
dude,
today? To me, this year has been especially hard.
Yeah.
Because someone that I was sitting with, like we are now, I found out, you know, the other day that they weren't here, and it was like, I was just with that person.
Yeah, yep.
You know, like, and he was full of like people like us, you know, that you're like, oh, they're on the top of their game. They're like, they have all these people that, you know, follow the work. You have so many people out, just such a great person. You're like, he's not here or she's not here anymore. And it's created a lasting thing in me, you know, that I slow down a little bit. You know, after TCIA, we're gonna slow down a little bit again. You know, I'm spending time with the family more.
Recollect, sort of like bring it all back together before you start putting it all out again, right?
And you gotta have those moments, that time every once in a while where you're like, okay, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna slow down,
pull back, reassess.
As much as you love what you do, like both of us, you have to, you know what, I'm taking a little bit of time for the family.
Yeah, you know, and I the person that you're referring to, did they die on the job or did they pass away differently?
Just differently, you know, not even like, and yeah, some people on the job as well, you know, but mostly just like driving from point A to point B.
Yes.
And that's what makes you realize that, like, I can probably not be here tomorrow.
Yeah, and so you, like myself, over the course of our careers in either training or contracting, I can actually safely say I've had thousands of students. Okay, and I've had thousands of students on 2 or 3 different continents, depending on where they are and where they're working at the time. And you know, I've got memorial stickers on every one of my helmets. I've got them in my van that I road trip around to remind me that, like, this is a finite experience. You know, like I was very close with, his name was Russell, and he was up in Idlewild. He was working with Pinot. And, you know, I had come up and I had done training, and I'd also come up and done some contracting. And I'd also come up and, you know, by nature of my job, I was filling out what they were doing great and maybe some things that they could improve on. And I just remember, you know, sitting down with these guys and breaking bread and doing this training, but also giving them constructive criticism. And, you know, just knowing that I was a little bit a part of that feels good. And then one day I find out that, like, he was advancing in his career. He was working on a family, had a committed girlfriend. Everybody around him loved him. And then one day he's gone. He didn't die at work. You know, it was something else that happened. But now, you know, I had a student that's no longer here. Or my mentor, James Luce, you know what I'm saying? It's like he was a permanent fixture in arboriculture for me. I wouldn't have been a trainer if it wasn't for him. He was the one that got a hold of Arboriculture Canada and was like, hey, you might want to get Johnny to trainer to do this thing. And, you know, Justin Hoffmeister, you know what I'm saying?
Man.
Like
I did a bunch of work with him.
My son's first birthday took place at his acreage, and then just like that.
Me and Nick Hoffmeister had a huge conversation because you know, the way that Nick grew up.
Yes.
You know, we won't get too much into details, but you know, I talked with Nick and it was like, you know, your dad had a hard time too, and it's and so that stuff that we don't train a lot in.
Yeah.
But we had conversations driving, and you know, maybe I didn't teach Nick how to climb, but I was able to share something with him that he was able to understand his father more. You know,
it just illustrates, you know, this is an experience that you have in life. It just happens to be like one of the funnest jobs in the universe. You know what I'm saying? But you get close to these people, and yes, this is a tree industry, but this is so much a people industry.
And it was funny that you mentioned James, because I had never met him personally.
Yeah.
We all knew each other through people, through Tyler.
Yes.
Right?
Junior.
And yeah, Junie.
Yep.
What's up? One day he gives me a call and he's like, hey, James wanted me to tell you this. I'm like, don't do that to me. Like,
whoa.
I didn't know the guy like that. Like, I knew of him. I followed all his work. Don't do this to me. He's like, no, like, he left something that he wants you to do. And I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that responsibility, you know? Yep. And he left some training for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And he said, I want Eric to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And I want him to go and help out with this. And
cool.
And Tyler got a hold of me to tell me that. And I was in Alaska when I got the call, you know, and I was like working, you know, I was actually cutting and doing stuff. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, wow. Like the impact that had on me.
Yeah.
It just, I can't explain. But that's what we deal with. And, and that's what we do. And I enjoy every single day of my life because I don't know if the plane that I jump on this afternoon is going to make it to California.
I know it's a wild thing to think. And, you know, you and I have had the privilege of impacting a lot of people's lives, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a story that I often share. We won't mention the name, but when I first arrived on the Butte Fire, late 2015 into early 2016, the whole fire program was really blowing up, and the idea of third-party site safety at that point was still pretty new. And the the protocols hadn't really been defined yet. So we were basically given best practices that we were going to enforce. And then we were going out into the field and we were checking crews. And it was my second day on the job. And I rolled up on a job site and there were some very dangerous things that were about to occur. There was a guy line that was set up improperly that wasn't going to function. There was a power line that was probably going to get taken out. It was just a very high risk scenario. And I got in there and I managed to sort of cool the situation down. And these guys, they were hard workers. They knew what they were doing, but what they were doing, they were cutting some corners. Mm-hmm. So I wrote that in my report because we don't have hiring and firing authority. We're just there to report. So I just reported what I found. And the next day I had found out that they had been let go. And then an hour later, they were waiting for me in the parking lot. And this is my second day on fire at the beginning of this thing. And I just got to thinking, I was like, well, this isn't good. Because, here I am. I'm like, at the time, what would I have been, like 26, 27 years old? And these guys are kind of out for blood. And also, I fully understand where they're coming from. They transplanted themselves to this project. They're coming down here to make money, to support their families, and now they're going to go home. Fast forward several years, I'm at Arborfest West. And I just finished doing the aerial rescue demonstration with some of the folks from NATS. And afterwards, this gentleman comes up to me and he's like, hey man, I just got to say thanks a lot. And I was like, wait a sec, I remember you. And he was like, yeah, I've started my own tree company. I've got 4 guys working for me. Wow. He's like, I've got this equipment. I'm doing this. We're growing. And I was just like, wow.
Was he one of the guys that wanted to kick your ass at first?
He was one of the guys that got let go. Now, in full transparency, I don't think I would have let them go. I would have just said, maybe a little more training is needed and let's get them back out there. But the decision was made and he chose to go on and basically kick some ass with it. And, you can't help but think, although we're doing things that may be uncomfortable right now,
absolutely, you
can choose to make them awesome. And relating that to James, it really hurt when we found out that James, was going to check out. And the last conversation that I had with James, we were reminiscing on getting in and out of helicopters together and getting dropped off on the top of mountains to go do conservation work together. And at the time, James was 70.
He definitely didn't look 70.
No, man, he was killing the game. And at the end of that, he sang my son happy birthday. And we hung up the phone and that was it. You know what I'm saying? And find me another job that isn't, military or first responders where you're going to have that kind of a bond where you're in it together, you're in the thick of it, you make those connections. And, now we have the purpose to live on and improve the industry in their name.
It's
pretty rad.
Awesome. It's pretty rad.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you're doing with Clogger. What's going on? I love everything you're doing. Big shout out to
nice pants, by the way. You can't tell, but they're probably illuminating me from below the orange. So so being a contract instructor for North American Training Solutions for several years until unfortunately my visa for renewal got denied, and then I was like, well, I guess I'm going back. Yeah, now I'm going back to Canada. But the beauty of that introduction that I was given to Clogger through that organization, by nature, I'm not super famous on social media or anything, but a few people, follow me and like what I get up to. And, I started talking back and forth with Clogger and they asked some really in-depth, interesting questions. Not the usual, how can we change this so more people will buy it? Right. It was more like, let's talk about how we can actually improve the industry with little moves that we can make, subtle things, and I'm a bit of I'm obsessed with philosophy. I love deeper thinking and really driving down to root cause and root issues. And after speaking with some of the folks in New Zealand, I realized that we were in a lot of ways on the same track through the industry. I'm not making saw pants, but I'm using them every day that I'm at work. And it was so cool to listen to a company that was committed to making things better simply for the sake of making things better.
Right.
And then I got to understand that this is not a huge company and they're throwing innovation out the front door like crazy. I started talking to their management, their systems and marketing director, and it was very interesting to hear him start talking about ideas that he was picking up from some of the most successful companies in the world. Ideas about scaling, ideas about innovating, ideas about staying agile with a product that needs to continually evolve to an ever-evolving industry. So we started to talk a little bit more and they started asking for a little bit of my input. Could you test out these pants? Could you go and destroy these pants? Could you go and do this and that? And they started sending me gear, which is kind of usually how these relationships start. Absolutely. And then I started, sending back my opinions and some of the things that I was finding, and they listened. They actually listened. So many brands just want to give you free things.
Yeah, here, wear my stuff and take pictures on it and put it on IG.
Exactly. You know, whereas they seemed really committed to listening.
Right.
And here we are, you know, it's been 3 years where we've been back and forth, and I've been using their products, and I'm literally just wearing generation after generation. They're sending these things out, I'm destroying them, I'm giving them feedback, they're continuing to evolve because they really care. So the opportunity to come down to TCI and partially represent Clogger came up, and it was a no-brainer. I just jumped on it. And, you know, thank you very much for having me, Clogger, but they're also stuck because New Zealand is on lockdown. Right. And it's relatively easy for me to come back and forth across the border as a Canadian. So the opportunity came up, and so here I am, and I'm just trying my best to not even really represent and sell the brand, because frankly, their products do that for,
absolutely,
you know,
for themselves.
I'm here as a like-minded individual, at least in my eyes. I'm here as a like-minded individual that's sort of on the same path of where they're headed with the larger perspective of what I want to do in this industry. And I'm connecting with people like you. I'm connecting with people like Mark Chisholm and Jared Abergina to sit down and talk about people that have been in this industry a while, that have had an impact. And I want to try to figure out where we're going. How are we, as people that have a little bit of push and pull with a little bit of influence, what are some of the actionable items that we can do to take this industry even further in the right direction? And I'm just stoked to be here.
Right. And I'm the same way. Brands want to give you stuff and put this on. For us. Mm-hmm. It's always been, and again, big shout out to Clogger and definitely to Pete, because they believe in everything we're doing, you know. Yeah. And so whenever someone asks us to represent their brand, not just on like, hey, give me feedback on this, but says, hey, you can wear this for trainings, you can do this. We're very careful. You know, unfortunately we've had to say no to some.
100%. Yeah.
And it's not because we don't like the product.
Well, it's not about the product.
It was
in some ways it isn't about the product.
It wasn't about the product. Right. It was because of their vision.
Exactly.
And their not even their work ethic, just the way they were.
Yeah, like, you know, we talk so much about a culture of safety, right? And you hear all of these companies also talk about a culture of safety or a culture of innovation or a culture of a commitment to raising the, you know, relative tide, or, you know, so that we can elevate the whole industry. And then unfortunately you inevitably see some brands maybe do a little bit less than they could, and maybe they're kind of chasing after that short-term profit, short-term impact, get that sale, move on. And inevitably when those products arrive in the mailbox and you take them out to the field and you test them, and maybe they don't quite work as well as they should, or maybe they do, but you can kind of tell that they're in it for the short buck, or they might not have a deeper vision. It's really hard for me to try to authentically spread the word and be honest about my experience with it. So, and I found that out the hard way, right? Like as an athlete, I rode different bike brands, and then, you know, later in my coaching career, I was flying different parachutes and different wingsuits. And you start to realize, like, the things that we say really matter, right? There's that saying, your greatest fear is not that you're inadequate, it's that you're powerful beyond all measure. And the idea behind that is everything that you do is going to have a lasting effect. Wow. So make sure you do the right things. And I get really worried sometimes when companies might reach out to me to say, test a product, and they want to have a review of that product within like 3 or 4 days of me receiving it. And it's like, unfortunately, guys, I haven't had a chance to really test it yet. You got to give it time. And if you want honest feedback, you're signing up for the roller coaster ride of honest feedback. I'm not going to go publicly and destroy a brand. That's not what I'm into. But I am going to be honest, and I'm going to be transparent, because my friends like Russell, friends like Ryan, friends like James, friends like Justin are going to be putting this gear on and trusting it. And in our job, you're trusting your life with it. So we have a real responsibility, and I take it really seriously.
And you very well should. Like anyone that gets anything involved into gear, accepting gear, or showing gear should, because someone's putting their life on this, you know. Yep. And one thing that happened to me, I learned the hard way too, like you're saying. One thing that happened to me is someone wanted to sponsor us, and you know, at first we liked the brand and everything, and we're like, yeah, sure. Let's sit down and talk about it. And they pulled out a contract, you know, and I'm not a business guy.
Sure.
You know, I'm a tree guy by nature. So I don't understand contracts. I don't understand legalities a lot of times, you know. And the only thing that I did understand on that contract was that, like, hey, you can't wear anybody else's stuff. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, red flag.
Yeah.
Like one of those crazy girlfriends, red flag. You know, it's like,
yeah.
hey, you're going to be my boyfriend, but you can't do this or you can't do that. And I was like,
right.
We haven't even gotten in a relationship yet.
Yeah.
And you're already asking me for these things?
Yeah.
And I'm like, these people support us to the max.
Yeah.
Because
they support a higher vision, right?
They didn't even give me a contract. They gave me all this stuff and said, hey, can you test this for us? Can you give us your honest feedback?
Yep.
Even if it's bad feedback.
Yeah.
You know, even if you put it out there, you know, and you know, honestly,
yep.
We're okay with it. This other company was like, you can't wear their brand. You can't. Yeah. I'm like, unfortunately, we won't be able to move forward with this.
Yeah.
Because all these other people do it for the right reasons.
That's right. There is a level between, you know, professionalism, and I understand, you know, like, you know, for instance, like Husqvarna and Still, they're working really hard at their on different ends of the industrial spectrum to try their best to advance what they believe is the direction that we need to be going.
Right.
And I fully respect that. And I, as an athlete, as an instructor, as a professional in this industry, I understand the need for non-conflict contracts. I understand that, like, right. You know, they're on a mission, and, you know, their competition is on a mission as well. But I think that us as, you know, I guess, maybe not innovators of the industry, but at least representatives in part of the industry.
Absolutely.
We need to work really hard in being very transparent in what it is that we're here to do. Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm not here to get famous. I'm not here to be a billboard. I'm here to improve the industry.
Absolutely.
And if somebody comes to you with a product that they think could play a part in that, it's a no-brainer. But if someone comes to you with a contract, for instance, that may actually limit your ability to have the effect that you're called to have, well, now I think it's our responsibility to be responsible, it's our responsibility to really do some critical thinking to make that decision. Because again, what we do matters, right? And what we say matters, because, you know, people are going to listen, right? And we have to be careful about how that gets passed across too. So thankfully, you and I are at a position in our careers where there's a lot of opportunities. And many of the people that have come up, you know, underneath us as students in our classes are now evolving into positions in the industry where they're gonna be coming to us and asking advice. I've had several students come and say, hey, you know, I was approached by this company and they're really excited to, you know, fill my mailbox up with ropes or with saws, but there is this thing that they want to make sure of, and I don't tell them to do it or not to do it, but I do let them know.
Look at all these things.
You gotta consider every aspect of this agreement that you're gonna do.
Why
and just
are you doing
ask
it?
yourself, is this going to take you in the direction that you want to be headed? And if the answer is yes, and it works for you, then by all means do that thing. But here I am. I'm at an excellent show. I'm seeing relationships that I have with obvious competitors on every side of this industry, and we're homies and we're friends. And there isn't some brand or some logo getting in between that relationship. Because again,
absolutely.
This industry is about people. It's not necessarily about gear.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
And it goes along with what we were first talking about. You're like, oh, well, what do you do? How did you do it? Well, I work for everyone, this and that. And I go to the Bay Area a lot, you know, and I sat in a talk at Apple. You know, I was fortunate enough to go and get in a talk, and they were talking about their products.
Yeah.
And how they could, it was for teachers.
Sure.
You know, it was like, how can they help teachers and this and that, you know? And I was just fortunate enough to be in the area, so I went to go check it out. Their whole talk was about how their product can help others do their job.
Right.
And, you know, watching online and everything, I saw like a talk with like Microsoft and all that. And a lot of their stuff was like how their product was better than Apple.
Right. Was superior to somebody else's.
And it was like the difference in that, you know, was just huge. You know, it's like, why are you making products work? Well, it's to make people better.
Right.
It's not to compete against that product, you know? And you see it in the level of their business, right?
100%.
Like everyone has an Apple phone. Everybody
you can smell it, you know what I mean? And like I'm no expert from, you know, you're from Samsung to Windows to Apple.
Right.
I'm definitely not a tech expert, and I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that there's a concept of a finite versus an infinite game, right? And I've chosen to dedicate my life to playing infinite games, ones that, you know, I will probably never truly come to fruition with, but I can at least enjoy the journey. And I think that, you know, coming from my past, I've had some pretty significant injuries. I've found myself at the edge of a river, basically bleeding internally. Like, this might be it. Wow. You ask yourself some pretty important questions, and when you come out of, you know, situations like that, you've sort of seen the truth, and you can't really forget it. And you know, now as I apply that to the rest of my life, I'm just sort of committed to trying my best to. If there's something that I can say, something that I can do to potentially save a life or improve a life, that's sort of what's important. And everything else that sort of just is along for the ride, that's fine. There are some finite games that we're forced to play, right? We got to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
We got to eat the meal. You know, we have to put the kid through school or whatever. But at the end of the day, even finite games can have an infinite goal, right? So are you doing this just to pay the bills? I mean, that's one way to go about it. But you can also pay the bills while committing to getting better every day, committing to having an open mind to learning, committing to sharing a little bit of knowledge or experience with your fellow person. You know what I'm saying? So that finite versus infinite game concept is something I hope I never forget. Right. And like you had mentioned, sometimes it does take a little bit. You got to come off the road. You got to get out of the hotel. You got to get out of that. You got to get off the stage a lot of times. Yep. And you got to take some time to think about, why are you doing what you're doing? Mm-hmm. And then once you've sort of reassessed that and reestablished that, then you can go out into the world and be effective.
Got to constantly keep doing that.
100%,
you know?
Yep.
And I constantly keep doing that. And every time when I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to be back on stage. I'm ready to have that energy, you know? If I do that all the time, it's just monotone, and it just gets old. You know?
See, and you know, to your point about, you know, only being able to be, say, involved with a single organization for the rest of your life, that's really scary, because what that takes away from you is exactly what you just sort of illustrated. Like, a little bit of contrast goes a really long way. Absolutely. So you go to company A and you see how things are going over there. You go to company B, you see how things are going over there, and you take the best of both. Yeah. And then you move forward into the world with real life experience, with the ability to weigh the pros and the cons and take you to the next level. Yeah. And, you know, for instance, sharing from my experience, if I'm on the road for, say, 3 weeks straight teaching, at the end of that 3 weeks, although I know I'm still being effective, it's time for me to go and do some real contract work again. Yeah. Right. I need to go do some production, because it's not like I'm forgetting the skills, but because I'm not tying a bow and bam in 4 seconds rather, you know, in 6 seconds, you just get this feeling like I'm just not quite as sharp as I was. Right. And there's that saying that, like, those who can't do teach, to hell with that. That's bullshit. Okay, frankly.
If he's not in this industry.
Right. If you commit to being to at least learning and trying to further your own development, then I think that you're equipped to teach. But I don't think you should ever be able to rest on your laurels. I think that you need to stay sharp, and if you're going to talk about staying sharp, you better show up sharp. Yeah. And after 3 weeks on the road, I'm ready to be in my own bed with my own crew. Oh, yeah. I'm ready to be on a saw. I'm ready to get dirty. And then back and forth. After about a month or two of full-on contract work, I'm kind of feeling like, you know, my body's starting to feel it.
I need a little break.
I think I'm ready to get up in the morning and start using my brain again. And I like going back and forth. And I don't I'm not sure if I'm ever going to be really set up to just do one or the other for the rest of my life.
Thank you. I don't feel so bad that I make that decision every day. Cool. Because I feel the same way, you know? And even after a show like this, like, I love people.
Yes.
I mean, I love tree people.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Like Ed always says, you know? Regular people are kind of weird for me. But when I leave here, like, I get back to cutting, maybe to being out with the crews in the field. Yeah. And, you know, it's just like, like, I get a break from this, you know,
100%.
not that, again, not that I don't, like, I love, you meet a ton of people here.
100%. And it has its value. It has its value 100%, but the contrast also is alluring when you're done here, right?
Yeah. Because once we do that, we get back home, we hang out, we do some work again. Hey, in a couple months, we're ready for another one.
Yeah, 100%.
And we're fresh, and we come out. And
you're excited.
And you're excited.
If you're excited, people can tell. Yeah. And, you know, I just love the fact that, like, bullshit meters are more developed than they've ever been.
Right?
Because it thins the herd. Like, honestly, you know, I've been doing this 20 years. If you can't tell that I'm still excited to be part of this industry, I mean, you got to start listening a little closer. Right. You know what I'm saying? Whereas there are some people that unfortunately get into careers, maybe not this one, that find themselves down that road 20 years and it's just another day. Yeah. And I don't know if that's something that I could ever perpetuate.
Oh, no. So 20 years. Where did it start? Where did
man.
it start? My dad was a logger, or a climber, or maybe he wasn't, or your family, or you just got into it. Where did it start for Johnny?
You know, it's crazy. Coming up, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like, it was like the classic, like, I want to be a astronaut. I want to be a architect. Like the things that everybody says.
Yeah.
And, I really, really got involved in mountain biking at a young age. And I was working at a bike shop, and I was about 14. And that's when you can, like, legally start drawing a paycheck in Canada, by the way. So I was working.
21?
No, 14.
Oh, 14.
Yeah. At 14, you can have a job where you're full-time and you're being paid, or at least part-time. Of course, I was still going to school and things like that, but I was working at a bike shop because I was obsessed with
14
bikes
years old.
At 14. And my father had spent 30 years cleaning processing plants, like chicken, like food processing plants. And I had gone in, when I was a kid and seen the job, and I thought, like,
you're like, damn,
I don't know about this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I worked in processing plants
did ya?
when I was younger,
Yep.
and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a fully noble career, and if that's what you do, like, all the power to you.
They make the world go round.
Exactly. But for
right.
me, I saw it, and I just thought, 30 years, like, holy moly. So then my that processing plant that my dad had worked at, it got shut down. Economies go through, fluxes, and now all of a sudden my dad's out of a job. He had committed 30 years to helping something get built, and now he's no longer there. And he bounced around. He was like cleaning trucks, and he was cleaning other processing plants out of town. He was on, and I just remember thinking, like, I don't know. And then one day, I'll never forget, I was 14. I was working at Burton Mac, Source for Sports, back home. Shout out.
Big shout out.
And my dad calls me. He's like, John Boy, because he calls me John Boy. He's like, you got to come over here on North Parkside Drive and have a look at what's going on. These guys are climbing trees, and they're getting paid to climb trees. And my dad knows me well enough. Like, all right, my son's a little psycho. Like, fully, this is going to be something he might want to be into. I rode my bike to the job site. I had a look. I was like, this is really interesting. I applied for a job, got the job, and just like everybody,
at 14 years old,
drag and brush, man, drag and brush. Started learning saws.
So you went up and watched the company work, and then you asked them for a job, or
how? Well, I had a resume already. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of grew up on an acreage. I understood work. Like, I was already a pretty hard worker. I was scrawny, dude. I was so skinny. I don't even think I weighed 100 pounds until like grade 11 or something like that. But
you're like, I'm ready to work. I'm 14 years old.
Let's do some stuff. You know what I mean? And I got the job. I dragged some brush, and the arborist there, his name's Will Hillary, which is awesome because now he contracts for my company, like full circle.
Wow.
He came out to the acreage, and he showed me the ropes. And I got to thinking, I was
like,
this is something that I think I can do.
Ropes.
Yep. So shortly thereafter, I was doing some climbing, doing some pruning, no PPE, you know what I'm saying? No real formal training, figuring out on the job. The boss, he tried his best, but he just wasn't equipped either. And over the years, I started to realize, I was like, you know what? If I'm really going to do this, I need to do this. So, that company came and gone in terms of employment for me, and I worked for a certified arborist in town for a little while, and I actually got some real knowledge, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty for this, let's do this. And then he ran out of work. This is back when the tree industry was kind of hurting. We were like going job to job to job, and my town isn't huge. There's 100,000 in it now, but when I was growing up, it was 40,000.
Plus, it wasn't as cool as it is now.
No, man.
We didn't have all this going on. We didn't have big expos.
Yeah. And remember too, it was cutthroat. So it wasn't. It was a fun industry to be working in, but it wasn't necessarily a fun industry to be in.
Oh yeah.
So things changed, and then I started thinking, okay, where am I going to find the opportunities that I need to get to where I want to go? And I looked. Basically, I was like, where are the biggest trees in Canada? Where's real industry? And it was on Vancouver Island. So I was like, you know what? I'm doing this thing. And after, doing trees in the summer and doing crappy work in the winter, like miserable work in the winter, I was like, you know what? I've had enough. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I had like $250. I had a crappy Ford Taurus that I got after my grandpa died. So I threw the bike rack on. I had $250 and I drove out to Victoria. No plan, no nothing. Wow. Got there. I called Davy Tree because I'd heard they're a big tree company. Yeah. And I was like, I know you guys aren't hiring, but I'd like to come in just for, I just want to come in for an interview. I said, I'll work a day for free. You just got to give me a shot. And Lloyd Rumbolt was there. He was the guy selling. Shout out to Lloyd.
Shout out to Lloyd. And probably like, listen, we can't not pay you.
Well, he was firstly like, who the fuck is this kid? But they gave me a shot, and I was hungry. I was stoked for it. It didn't take long until I was in a bit of a leadership role. I've sort of always come to that naturally. I have a background in sports. I know how to suffer. I know how to work hard. And then before you know it, I was a foreman. And before you know it, I had a truck and a chipper and a crew that I was responsible for. And this is over the course of 4 to 5 months. And I'm enjoying it. And they're big trees. It's high consequence. It's excellent. And then some other opportunities started coming up in my life back home. There was some modeling stuff actually at the time that I was going to go and do. There's some sports things that I wanted to go do. So I was like, you know what? I really loved being here, but it's time for me to maybe go on and do my own thing. Admittedly, fully not ready, but it is what it is. So I moved back home 2007, August 2007.
How old are you at this point?
19.
19?
So go home, 19. I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this. So I start up a tree company with my old man.
Wow.
And immediately, 2007, we started in August. In September 2007, I took the whole crew, which at that time was 3 people and a friend, up to a seminar, a Vermeer seminar that Dwayne Newstater was delivering. And he was teaching climbing. And I was thinking, like, I know this stuff. And he's doing an awesome job. And one day I'm going to do that job too.
Wow.
Now, it took years, obviously, but I kept going to seminars and I kept paying for training for my guys. And one thing led to another. The company grew and grew and grew. And now we're still operating, 15 years later, we're still in business. And we got 9 full-time guys. We got a couple bucket trucks on the road. We got some chippers, some equipment.
You sound very responsible at that age. I don't think.
Well, I didn't have a choice, man. I kind of, in some ways, raised myself. Like my parents split up when I was young. Dad was always working. Mom was doing the single mom thing. She was in college. She was working. It was me and my little sister. And I don't know if you had an experience like that, but in some ways you're sort of forced to just get your shit together and grow up quickly. So that's what I did. And, I definitely missed out on my 20s. Like, in full transparency, there was no going out to the clubs and drinking.
Partying out and hanging out with your friends and doing all
No, man, it
shit.
was from 19 to like 24. I was super focused to the detriment of relationships, to the detriment of like really being one of the guys. Like, I was pretty focused. But at the same time, there was that part of me that wanted to go and explore and ride my bike and climb mountains. And, one thing led to another. And now I'm, a sponsored athlete for mountain biking and rock climbing. And that led me to the top of cliffs that got me really interested in flying. So now I'm jumping out of airplanes. I'm learning how to base jump. And all of that all of the things and the lessons I'm learning from there started really lending themselves to development in arboriculture. And I was like, oh, this is cool. They're supporting one another. So at 25, so 6 years into the company, I decided, you know what? I'm going to try this pro athlete thing, right? So I'm on the road now and I'm moving around. I'm traveling around for sponsors. I'm living in Vegas. I'm living in Tampa, Florida, and I'm riding bikes and I'm doing parkour and like all of this stuff. And so that would have been in 2012. In 2013, I had a brutal accident where a parachute didn't open on a base jump. And I broke 14 bones.
So where was this at?
This is Twin Falls, Idaho, which is where everyone goes to base jump, basically. It's a legal bridge.
So it's off of a bridge?
Yeah. So, and I'd already jumped that bridge a bunch of times, but, I was jumping some gear that I was trying out, and I had a malfunction, and I fell.
Malfunction on the gear?
Yeah, so no parachute came out, and I fell 500 feet into the water. I broke both my legs, both my arms, half my ribs, my sternum, shoulder blade. I collapsed my heart. I had internal bleeding. I was in bad shape. But I managed
500 feet.
Yeah, 490 something.
Yeah.
I'm rounding up, you know what I'm saying? But
wow.
It was brutal and it shattered me. The company went through a terrible period.
Yeah, I mean, you're the pinnacle of the company at this point.
Problem.
You're the lead.
Exactly, and my relationships collapsed, and now I'm broke.
Were you married already?
No, at this time, girlfriend of 7 years, but that ended. You know what I'm saying? So like,
yeah, no one. Sometimes people don't stick around.
Well, and I mean, and also
it's hard on them too.
I was gonna say, but I've just been on the road for 6 months straight too. Right. So how's that for a relationship? Right. So I was singularly focused, like so many are, right? Yeah. Singularly focused on success. And although I was getting it in that side, I was letting too much fall behind. Thankfully, I survived, got my poop in a group, and years of surgery, years of dealing with that. Even now, constant physio. You see me online, man. I'm like just trying to stay ahead of it. And through that recovery, I learned some really important lessons.
How long was your recovery?
I'm still in it. It's 8 years, man. Like, I don't have a rotator cuff on this side. I physically can't make my arm go faster. My back is a wreck. Every time I'm in spurs, my left leg hurts a little bit. My foot is a mess. But you're not going to see me complain about it, right?
No.
Like, these are just things that I can use to my advantage. They're teaching me how to suffer.
Right.
They're teaching me how to dig deep. And I just choose whatever happens in life. I'm just going to learn from it and move forward. That's just what I've committed to. And then, thankfully the surgeries are now sort of gone, there might be a few more in the future. I'm not worried about it.
Right.
But it would have been coming out of that injury, maybe 2015, where training became something I was realizing was really calling me. And James Luce was doing a Vermeer seminar. He's doing aerial rescue. And I was taking my employees to it. And I was just off of crutches from like maybe having screws taken out of my leg or something. And his assistant for the day didn't show up. And I was like, hey, man, can I help? And he was like, I need help. Let's do this. And I ended up in the tree. And at the end of that seminar, he approached Arboriculture Canada and said, I think it's a good idea that Johnny takes trainer. Took trainer. And it just happened to be that at that time, Arboriculture Canada and North American Training Solutions were very close. They were developing curriculum together, right. And the call to California came out. So I had done some assisting. I just started doing a little bit of lead instructing, and the opportunity to go to California. And you know me, man. It's like, this sounds like a challenge. Let's do this. Let's go. So that was that. Down to Cali I went, started teaching for Nats, teaching for ArbCan, still running the company, still trying to stay ahead of the injuries, do the professional athlete thing. I met a woman down there. I'm now married to her, had a little baby boy at Paradise, you know what I'm saying? So it was such an amazing period of time that unfortunately I was moving so quickly. I don't actually have much differentiation between the order. At some point I was in Angels Camp. At some point I was in Santa Rosa. It's like, it just moved so fast. There was so much going on. And now, thankfully, I'm at a period of my life, I'm 34 now. The company's doing well. I've reached a place in the industry that I think is sustainable. I think I know the direction I'm headed. And thankfully now I'm able to sort of, like you had said, sort of draw back, reassess, and really focus on where I'm headed. And I'm so thankful to be involved with companies like Hikes and Clogger and Edelrid. I'm so happy to be involved with people like you, knowing some of the best guys in the industry that are patient enough to put up with my bullshit, that are like down to talk and down to share. And, now I just have this whole new playground ahead of me of like an impact that I might be able to have on an industry, and that's where I'm at now, sitting next to you, doing the podcast at TCI 2021.
How can you be ungrateful with life or have a shitty attitude?
Yeah.
When the universe, when whatever you believe in, God or whatever has taken, when life has taken care of you like that, I guess some people can say, oh, I got hurt and I could be ungrateful with life. But you chose not to do that. You chose to use all of that for good, not only for the betterment of yourself, but again for what you're doing for others. And,
Thanks,
and
man.
It's just so awesome. I had a pretty major injury when I was coming up, and I already had a kid, and I couldn't provide for my family. And I broke all of my, clavicle, my sternum, every single ligament, tendon, nerve, bone in my arm, and all of this. And so I was like, what am I gonna do if I can't, And the doctor saved my arm, and they told me it wasn't gonna work, you know. And I'm like you, like I can't do certain things with my arm, It's still a recovery. It's always a recovery. And
but you know what? You work around it, right? And that's almost kind of part of the fun.
Dude. After 6 months or a year of not being able to move my arm, and they saved it because they wanted to cut it off initially.
Yeah, that sucks.
and I was able to do this, and then I was able to get into climbing. I was extremely happy. Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's on, and someone took the time to put me back together, you know. And save me basically, and so I'm so grateful. Yeah, like people. Yeah,
shout out to doctors and surgeons.
Absolutely. I try not to see them now because I don't even go to the doctor, which I should. My wife's been bugging me.
Well, hey man, you guys live in the States. Going to the doctor's scary down here. I know. Where I'm from, if you got to go to the doctor, you just pick up the phone, you go to the doctor. Dude, you get your medicine, you peace out.
We learn so much from each other because I with that, I mean, here it's scary. I'm always like, the only time I'll go to a doctor again is, God willing, hopefully it never happens again. Is when something like that happens to me again. Man. But I'm fortunate enough to be healthy, to be able to do things that I thought I was never going to be able to do ever again.
Right.
Especially not climb a tree.
Totally.
So when I was able to climb a tree, I was like, I don't give a shit if I'm like the shittiest climber ever out there.
At least I get to go and
At least I get to climb.
And now look at you, man. So I think, gratitude is going to be huge. And I think any opportunity that we can find to either find, express, or feel gratitude it's important to do. I think that's important for life, but especially in our job, because our job it's high risk, it's very stressful, it's very easy to have emotions get real high and intelligence and sensitivity go real low. And it's such an interesting industry because it forces a certain amount of self-awareness. And like, really, we're all going to die. It would be kind of nice to die knowing that you tried your best, you took the challenges, and you moved on from them, and maybe you grew and maybe you improved the world in some way. So this is our tiny little microcosm of the universe that we maybe have the potential to affect. So let's try our best to do that.
Yeah, you impact one person, they impact 10.
Yeah.
That 10 impacts 100.
You got it.
After that, you reached a million
That's right.
from just that one person. So, so cool.
Cool,
what
man.
are you doing now? What's
Well,
I mean, we do so much. But what are you doing after TCIA? What are you doing with the company? What are you doing with the training? What's Johnny up to after this?
So moving forward, just had a pretty major thing occur. And so when I was down here, I was working on TN visas. When we met, I was on a temporary non-resident visa.
Yeah, it's so good to meet someone else that's an illegal also. It's like, like, oh, you have the same problems? Hey,
well, here's the thing, man. 2 days ago, I'm coming through Calgary. I'm checking in for my flight. And after 4 years of work and thousands of dollars, I now have a permanent resident stamp in my passport.
Oh, nice.
So what that allows me now to do, just, my wife is from New Mexico. I met her in New Mexico. She hasn't been able to really see her family for a couple of years because of COVID and because I wasn't able to travel, and I'm sort of the main provider for the family at this time. So now with that tool, I'm going home. I'm going to make sure that the guys are set up. Thankfully, after 15 years in business, we have a lot of work to do. And we've got lots of ongoing contract work, which, by the way, guys, if you own tree companies, you really want to make sure you hedge yourself against slow times. You have employees, they're relying on you. You got to take care of those people. But at the same time, you need to gradually work your way out of the company from being the only guy in the air. And thankfully, I have incredibly talented people at home. So at the end, early December, I'm going to make sure that everything's set up for winter, because winter in Canada started about 2 weeks ago where I'm from, and it's going to go until probably about March sometime. So they're going to be set up to kick some ass this winter, and the family and I are kind of planning on coming down for a few months.
Nice.
I'm super grateful. I've had some excellent offers from some of the people that both you and I have worked for in the past, as well as, other organizations that are coming up and making some pretty serious moves in the industry. And basically right now, I'm gonna get the family together. I'm gonna bring it all back in, like you were saying, reconsolidate, refocus, and then set a direction. And then whichever one of those opportunities looks like it aligns in that direction for me, I'm going to jump on that. Going to spend some time in the winter doing some fun things, Nice. I'm going to put up some rock climbs. I'm going to spend some time in the desert. I'm going to fly some wingsuits.
In the States.
In the States, yeah. And then come spring next year, the plan is back in Canada. I've got some excellent opportunities in conservation now. That's something that I've been working on for probably 4 years. So working with Alberta Forestry, working with forestry outfits in British Columbia. I'm really excited to start getting into the forest and start doing what I can for the larger picture. So whether that's, cone collection contracts, conservation projects for trees that are now being threatened. I also applied to take my BCMA exam. I'm accepted.
Awesome.
So I'm going to be writing that here in the next probably few months. So I'm excited to be able to take my career, my education with that credential a little bit further as well.
Awesome.
So some big things professionally. And then, like I said, I got a baby boy coming in April. So that's going to take a significant amount of focus. And I think it's also important, I've spent a lot of time in my life on the road. And I think that my wife deserves to have some time both with us as like a cohesive family unit.
Right.
And I also think that my wife deserves some time to provide for herself again. She's very independent. She's a very smart person. And you know what it's like when you're at home with the kids, it's taking 100% of your focus. You're not focused on yourself. You're not really getting the chance to develop or really further your own hopes and dreams. So I want to be able to do that for the family as well. So lots going on, but kind of excited for all of it. I try not to get too stressed out, and I take things one step at a time.
Absolutely. And the most important thing is what you just mentioned, which is something I've had a hard time with, It's like, I provide for my family. It's cool. It's all good. But, I step back and I see my wife, and she's put out a lot of things that I could have my dream and so that I could travel the world. And so I'm in the same boat, and thank you for sharing that, because
You're welcome. Thanks.
I've had a hard time understanding that. And every other good friend that I talk to, like you, has given me that advice, like, take time and do this and do that. And that's where I'm at as well. I got to take care of my family.
Yeah.
I got to make sure that, you know what, this is fun. I am having fun. I am
Yep.
doing all this, but I have a family. I have my wife. And she's so smart too. You know, I mean, I wouldn't be able to, and beautiful. I don't even know how we get.
You got to get back home.
You know, so
yeah.
And so it's very cool to realize that and to try to work towards that, because I'm good at a lot of things, but I've never been good at that. And so
you got to develop those weaknesses, man.
I love that. I love those situations. I think we're in the business that we're in because we're problem solvers. We're developers. And I didn't think it was an issue that I needed to work on.
Yeah.
But I know that it is. And,
cool, man.
And I look at everything moving forward, and I'm like, I'm so excited that I get to, you know, mend our relationship per se, or make it better, you know, because it's not broken or anything.
No.
It's just, you know,
but it's an opportunity.
Be a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. It's an opportunity to return and figure out where you came from, and then use that yet again, just like everything else in life, as fuel to continue down the path, right?
Absolutely.
Like, you know, Miyamoto Musashi said that, like, you can't. He was like a sword fighter, okay, and he killed a lot of people hand to hand, to the death combat. And his whole philosophy was like, you never leave home without cleaning home. You can't leave a messy kitchen. So the idea is that, like, if you're going to go out and be as effective as you can in this world, you got to just know what you've left behind is good to go. You know what I mean? You've done the dishes, you've made your bed, you've spent the time, you've developed the skills, and, you know, maybe if you don't get to come back, at least you left it the way that you should. And if you can operate like that, it takes a lot of that mental load off. It really instills clarity, and it just helps you move forward in a productive way. So that's kind of something I'm just trying my best to be able to do.
Well, how am I going to be truthful in what I preach or what I teach or what I tell others when I don't have my house in order?
Exactly, man. How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah, I love that saying, man. And it's that's what it is. You know, that's what we're here for. So
cool, man.
I'm so glad that we got a chance to hang out and spend some time, man.
So
it's
good.
so
awesome. So good.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
To come out and for me, I mean, the guys have opened up this and said, here.
Yeah.
And I can't even thank them enough. And they're all running around doing their thing. And
they obviously trust us with all this cool stuff. Don't know if that's the greatest idea.
I know, right? Yeah. But it's an awesome setup. Maybe next time you're in California, we'll actually have you at the studio.
I'd love that.
Love the studio.
I'd love it,
down
man.
At the ranch.
Okay, well, let's stay in touch because I'm going to be out in that zone here in the next few months. So for sure, let's do something.
Yeah. So thank you for taking time to be here.
Cool.
Everyone that's going to be tuning in and listening on this later online.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here with us and for everything you guys do in the industry, because I know you're like me. You take in so much from the people that you teach.
100%.
And you learn as well when you teach. And a lot of what we do is what someone else has taught us.
100%.
You know,
yeah, absolutely. You know, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yep.
And that is the truth. I wouldn't be where I am today without the influences like Dwayne Newstater, without the influences from my father, from Lloyd at Davey Tree, from Ed Carpenter at Nats, from
big
folks
shout
like
out
you,
to all
folks
of
like
them.
Travis Morales, folks like Justin, folks like James. Like, I am the product of so many incredibly generous and open people, and I just want to make sure that I'm going to be that as well moving forward.
Can't put it any better. Well, with that,
cheers.
We end our podcast, Two Tree Guys podcast.
Yeah, we're
Two
we're two tree guys.
Two
We
tree
did it.
guys.
Okay, guys, thanks so much.
Awesome.
Peace
Thank
out.
you so much. Take care.